All right, we're over 24 hours after this game has ended for this recap. You could say I needed a little time. I think that's fair. Also, a little burned out. It was a load management issue. Connor and I have done a bunch of these recaps this week. So we enjoyed our Saturday evenings with our families. Here we are on a Sunday to talk about everything that happened in Michigan's overtime loss to Oregon. 86-83 was the final. That's Connor Hope. He checks CBB. I'm GregWaddell, Sleepers Media. Dug McDaniel had 33 points. Michigan lost this game. I still can't square that. I think it's a very bad omen that those things happened concurrently. Are you on the same page with me that maybe this is a really dark sign of things to come if they wasted such a good Dug McDaniel game?
I was going to say this was the Dug McDaniel game, and I mean that in the worst possible way. Because Dug McDaniel started off hot. He went 7 for 12 from 3. But they just I just don't know what they were doing in this game. And it wasn't just one player. Like Shedder, who's a 75% 3-point shooter, had one attempt from 3 this entire game, and it came in the last 2 minutes or something. They should have dominated the boards. They won the boards, but not nearly. It was really close until kind of towards the end of that game. And ball movement was non-existent, whereas Oregon's ball movement was incredible. I don't know. I just can't figure out what it was. There seemed to be a lack of effort from some of the players, and we'll talk about it. That there was a definite play, and I don't think it would have mattered, but on that dunk towards the end of the game, Burnett got beat and then just pulled up. And he didn't even really get beat that bad. There was an opportunity he could have stayed in front of his man or at least affected the pass. But he just pulled up. Kamwa, who we thought was going to have a big game, decidedly did not. And even at the end of the game, he made a couple of plays that could have won them this game and immediately fumbled the opportunity to put the game away. So, and then there's Terrace Reed, but I'm sure you can talk all about him.
Yeah, it's Michigan is a collection of individuals right now. That's how I've talked about them when we recap every single game. I think at this point, you just have to analyze this team as that more than a team. And I that sounds like an indictment on the coaches. I think to an extent it is an indictment on the coaches. I don't even know what is happening with the coaches, quite frankly, because Juwan Howard was the assistant coach this game. He was less involved on the bench than he was at the Battle for Atlantis. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but at least he's embracing the actual role of assistant coach. Phil Martelli was supposedly the head coach. And in overtime, when there were timeouts, neither one of them had the clipboard. They had the clipboard in a different assistant coach's hands. So I just don't know. Everything feels like it's by committee, both with the staff and with the players, but they're not a cohesive unit at all in any way, either offensively or defensively. And it's weird because I think to a lot of points, this is who we thought Michigan would be. This is why they were picked where they were picked. A lot of people had them 11th or 12th in the preseason in the Big Ten. Nobody expected anything from this team. But it almost comes with a tinge of disappointment that that's how we're feeling now 8 games into the season, because Dug is so much ahead of where anybody thought he would be individually. And it's hard to square those two things, because if you have a great point guard, theoretically that should elevate a team. That should be a sign of things to come for a team. And in reality, the results are what we thought they would be, just with a point guard who I think is a top 5 point guard in the country, at least offensively right now. But yeah, let's go individually, right? Because that's how I'm saying we got to analyze this team. Nimari Burnett played 40 minutes in this game. He can never come off the floor. They give him the assignment of the opposing team's best offensive player. The problem is he's not a lockdown defender. He's a lot worse defensively than I thought he was going to be coming from where he came from. He hit some big threes in this game. He continues to shoot the ball well, as he has all season, but he's not very confident with his handle. And if the ball's not in Dug's hands, it's in Nimari's, and it doesn't usually go well. Olivier Kamwa is the most frustrating player I've watched in my program in a long time, and I watched Jett Howard last season.
Do you want the play-by-play for the last minute and a half of regulation?
Yeah, go ahead.
Olivier Kamwa gets a steal down 2, immediately shoots a 3 and misses.
It was a 3-on-1. It should have been a dunk. It was either if he passes to the left, it's a dunk. Instead, he runs to the corner.
So that was with a minute and a half left. Then you have him. He gets the inbound pass with 30 seconds left, up 1, misses the front end, and Oregon gets the defensive rebound. Then he gets the steal on the inbounds pass 6 seconds later and misses the back end of the free throws, which would have put them up 3 with 20 seconds left. Like it was so frustrating because he made 2 huge plays. And on the pass he got on the first, the 1-and-1 opportunity, like he made himself available on what easily could have been a 5-second call or needed to be a timeout at the end of that game. And just couldn't deliver on the offensive end. And that's what we were talking about before this game, is that, like, I think he's a better offensive player than this, but they just can't get him going. And that's how you get a guy who shoots 4 of 12 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3.
Yeah, it's the first game this season. Look, I've talked about being frustrated with his performance. It feels like he's floating a lot of times. This is the first game of the season where I feel like there were tangible production things that were bad and that weren't there. Like in the other games where I've criticized him, he's still finished with 18 points, 16 points. Like it's been hard to step back and be like, oh, Kam was not as good as I wish he would be, while he's, hitting a 3 every game and scoring the way he had been. Tonight, he didn't. He was 1 for 6 from 3. I thought he kind of went away from the ball at times. And he had some big one-on-one plays, both at the end of regulation and overtime. The steal was really good. He had a really tough hand-in-the-face fall away that tied the game late in overtime. Like, there are always moments in games where you're like, that's a superstar. The problem is it's never an every possession thing with him. And this was definitely his worst game of the season. If you got just an average Kamwa game, I think Michigan wins this game by 7 to 10 points, but it didn't happen. And yeah, there was a lot of baffling mental stuff. And then the third name, like if we're doing, okay, we got to talk about Namari, we got to talk about Kamwa. The third and last name you have to talk about is Terrace Reed, who is a disaster. Like we can talk in circles about Kamwa needs to be better. Burnett isn't as good as we would like. Terrace Reed being so far behind what everybody thought he should be this season is the largest reason this team is where it's at. And it's difficult because Terrace Reed has the physicality and he has the foot speed to be a great defensive center. Like we've seen it in games before. Last year, he just destroyed Joey Hauser. They put him at the 4 next to Hunter Dickinson, and he won Michigan the game in Ann Arbor against Michigan State. This year, he's in the wrong spot constantly. His defensive awareness is lower than 0. It's like a -50 because what he does on a play-by-play basis, like he will jump for blocks that he has no chance to block and then give up an uncontested putback dunk. Like if he just stands there, even if he's not contesting the shot, at least he's checking out the second opportunity. And this is a mistake he makes 10 to 15 times a game right now. He needs to be coached out of it very clearly. Juwan Howard is a coach that has done extremely well with big men in his career, both in the NBA and in college. And he's not doing it with Terrace Reed. No.
And I don't know, the defense just all around for this Michigan team. And it's not just Reed, but the defense, you let Rigsby go for 19 and it wasn't, he made all 3 of his threes. Great. He also went 5 of 9 attacking the rim. Like he would get into the paint, get into the, to the elbow. And he was great against a team that should be athletic and long enough to keep Rigsby from being great. I just don't get it. And maybe Michigan, like they gave up quite a few open threes, but man, to have a team shoot 62% against you from 3 when you're already one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country it's a rough look.
Yeah. Yeah, it's every game, right? Like
Yeah.
that's I now come into games expecting that a team is going to make half their shots from three against Michigan. Just is what it is because they get wide open looks. And look, at some point, I feel strongly at some point Michigan's going to play a team that even though they get 30 wide open threes, just shoots 5 for 30. Like at some point in a 30 game season, you're going to play Florida Atlantic the night they can't hit a shot. And whenever that happens, Michigan will win that game. Because if you can't keep up with Michigan scoring wise, even with all the issues we're talking about, Michigan's offense is awesome. This is an awesome offensive team because Dug McDaniel is incredible. Everything else is a disaster and they have no depth and it's not going to change. I really don't think. Like if you're talking about what could move from now to the end of the season for Michigan, I think it is Terrace Reed primarily. Like, can he just have any sort of clue what to do defensively by the end of January? If he can, then you feel a lot better about where this team's at. If he can't, there's a huge limit to their ceiling. But like everybody else, man, like Mari Burnett is who he is at this point, and I think he's a good third option. Like that's fine. They don't need more from him than that. Olivier Kamwa needs to be more consistent. It's not going to change. Terrence Williams is who he is. He made strides in his game. That's not going to change. Then off the bench, you've got nothing. That's been the story of the team. And Jalen Llewellyn came back. This was his return for the first time in over a year. He tore, I forget if it was his ACL or MCL against Kentucky last season, but has not played, had barely been practicing as far as I had known up until a week ago. And I thought he looked pretty good, to be honest. In 10 minutes, he had a couple assists. He did have like a nice little classic Princeton's jump stop layup finish. And then he was 0 for 1 from 3. But those minutes had been going to George Washington III, a true freshman who was way in over his head. So I think like there's at least a little promise that, okay, maybe they can work Llewellyn into this and maybe do some 3-guard lineup stuff. And maybe that helps a little bit. But did you see anything from Llewellyn that makes you optimistic for Michigan fans or no?
I don't, I mean, yeah, I don't think you can take this game because it's his first game back and really pull too much out of it. The fact that he wasn't a net negative in the game, in a game that he easily could have been, given everything else, I think is a positive at that point. I don't know. I like, what do you do? Do you like, at what point do you throw Cheddar into the starting lineup over Reed? Because if Reed's not going to be a good defender, he's certainly not the better offensive option of the two.
Yeah.
So
the problem with Cheddar, I am very impressed with what Cheddar has turned himself into in a year. He was horrendous last season, and I joked about him all offseason. He spent the entire summer on a cattle ranch while Dug McDaniel and Terrace Reed were in the gym working on their bodies. Will Cheddar was on a cattle ranch for the summer. That's a real thing. This is not a joke. He has turned into a useful player way earlier than I thought he would. That's great. He's a great bench forward type. To me, I would love to do the whole, why don't we work him in? Why don't we start him, see what happens? He's the worst rebounding big in the country, though.
That's fair.
He doesn't have a game this season with more than 3 rebounds. He's played between 14 and 21 minutes every single game. He has 4 rebounds in his last 3 games combined. He did not pick up a defensive rebound against either Oregon or Texas Tech in 33 combined minutes. It's a joke how bad he is on that end. So but it's like you're picking your poison, right? You're either picking Terrace Reed, who has no offensive game and is clueless defensively, or Will Cheddar, who is in the right spot most times and can hit threes, but can't guard any post. Like they'll just score over him and doesn't rebound. Like it's either one's a disaster, right? Like, so I don't know what you do, man. I don't know what you do. I think this is it is just the reality of the roster, and it's why a lot of people didn't like this Michigan team coming in. But all right, let's do the elephant in the room conversation. Dug McDaniel, 33 points, 7 for 12 from 3. He hit 4 threes before the first media timeout in the second half. I think Doug's been stellar this season. I think he's had games where he's been a great facilitator. He's got 3 games with 7 or more assists this year. He has only 1 game with a bunch of turnovers. Like he's limited that pretty much. I think he really is the complete package to me at point guard. Like this is what I envisioned senior Dug McDaniel would look like. And it's here December 2nd of his sophomore year. That's fantastic. That's great. Love him for it. Fun player. At what point does this program need to worry about whether or not he's on the Michigan roster next year?
Now.
Like to me, that's the only concern. Like that's the only thing you should be playing for is make sure you get 2 more years out of Dug at this point.
Right, because it's one of those things where you take Dug McDaniel, playing an Oregon team that I've been saying is uninspiring with their 2 bigs, without their 2 bigs, puts up 33 points, has a stellar performance in this game. And they can't put enough around him to win. Where, like, and I'm not saying Dug McDaniel is the same caliber as Boo Buie, but Boo Buie has a stellar performance against the number 1 team in the country, and he gets enough out of the rest of his teammates defensively and offensively to beat Purdue, to beat Zach Edey. And I don't think Dug McDaniel has the same, he doesn't carry himself the same way as Boo Buie. But if you're Dug McDaniel, you're looking at this roster next year, and you're going, man, am I going to go my whole career without making the tournament?
Yeah. So I don't love doing the look too far ahead because the sport changes so much. But this is around the time last year, man. I think this is a month earlier than I did it. But around this time last year, we went on it's called the Spiro Avenue show here in Michigan. And I had this whole thing where I said, Hunter won't be on this team next year. And at the time, like the host, Justin Spiro, was just like, what are you talking about? I'm like, trust me, he's not going to be here. Like, he's unhappy. Juwan Howard has failed him. And when we get to the summer, the biggest name coaches are going to call him. I don't want to do this because Dug's my favorite player in Michigan history since Trey Burke. He's literally my favorite player to watch in over a decade. He's going to get calls. Like, he's going to get tampered with because great players get tampered with when they're in bad situations. And look, I don't know what Dug McDaniel is wired like. Honestly, I had gotten to meet Hunter by that point, and I felt like I had a better pulse on the person who Hunter Dickinson was to be able to make some of those guesses. I have no idea how Dug McDaniel is wired. He's already, earlier than people expected, put in a spot where he's going to have stellar numbers. I think even if Michigan's teams are bad, there's going to be no limit of opportunity of what he can do individually here. And maybe that's all that matters. Juwan Howard has put people in the NBA. And if that's what the 5'8" point guard wants a path to, I would argue there's no better spot than being a first option at Michigan. With that said, it's the 2nd consecutive year, if not 3rd consecutive year, that Juwan Howard has built rosters with massive holes in them. And he's not even with the team right now. He failed this team in the summer when he spent all summer planning for Caleb Love. That was it. That was his whole plan, was Caleb Love's on this team, knowing there was a chance the school wouldn't let Caleb Love in after everything that had gone on with Terrence Shannon the year before. It's a mistake that I think is going to define the Juwan Howard tenure at Michigan. It might end up being the reason that he's no longer Michigan's head coach as soon as a season from now. But I don't know what you do with Dug, because obviously there's questions on if Juwan Howard's going to keep his job. And the only priority for me the rest of the season as a fan is that Dug is happy and Dug is doing his thing, because I don't think this team's going anywhere. And it made me ashamed, man. It made me ashamed because that's the type of individual performance. If you get that, you have to win the game. And
right.
Nobody could chip in to get it done.
Yeah, it's because I'm trying to think of like where he could end up next year.
Jerome Tang's going to call him. I'll tell you that.
Jerome Tang's going to call him. Does UConn take a second swing at him?
Don't do that to me. Oh my God. That would be
Castle's gone. Cam Spencer might be gone. Or not Castle. Newell's gone. Castle's staying.
Yeah.
You put him alongside Castle on a team that's won a championship. That'll probably be a second weekend team this year. They were the best team now, looking, hindsight's 2020, to offer him during his recruitment. Like it's him. I could see, I don't know. Could you see anyone in the DMV taking a swing at him?
Yeah, I mean, I look, I hate doing this game because you can do it with so many players, but like he just is. He's gonna get tampered with. Like Ed Cooley should call this kid immediately.
Right.
You're right. UConn would be a great fit. I do think Jerome Tang will call him immediately. And look, the truth is, if Juwan Howard is let go, why wouldn't he leave? Right? Like
Yeah.
it's just the truth of what it is. And maybe if I'm a decision maker in the room, truthfully, maybe Dug McDaniel alone is enough to give Juwan Howard more than one more year. Like, I don't know. If I'm a Michigan fan, would I rather go into an extra year of Juwan Howard a season from now, knowing I have junior Dug McDaniel back, than a rebuild? I think I would.
The issue is that like you have to make the decision about Juwan Howard in April at the latest.
Yeah.
And Dug McDaniel's going to make any decision he makes is probably going to happen May, June.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's tough. It's a tough situation. All right, Michigan, it's going to get harder for Michigan. They've got Indiana at home. I would call that a must-win game. You can't lose 5 of 6 games and lose to Indiana at home with the way Indiana looks right now.
I mean, the benefit to Michigan is that Indiana doesn't hit threes. So
that's the season is over for Michigan if Indiana shoots 50% from 3. We can say that. Yeah, they got Indiana at home. Ken Pom likes them by 6 in that game for what it's worth. And then they're on the road to Iowa this week. At minimum, I would say you need to split those, but pivotal week, earlier than anybody wished it would have happened for the Wolverines. Let's end with this. Just call your shot. We'll probably do this periodically throughout the season, but as of today, from what you've seen, does Michigan find a way to make the NCAA tournament? Yes or no?
no.
I'm with you. I think they're on the outside looking in as of today. Ask me in a week if that changes. All right, that's Connor Hope from Heat Check CBB. I'm GregWaddell. My Dug McDaniel shirt just came in the mail. Keep an eye out for that. Go support Dug McDaniel, Michigan fans, for as long as we can.